everyone. We are about to report the reflective approach in teaching social studies.
Hope you're doing well, keep safe, and please listen to our discussion reflectively.
So the term reflective practice derives from the work of Dewey and Sean. John Dewey defined reflective practice as an active, persistent, and careful consideration of any belief or supposed form of knowledge in the light of the grounds that support it. And as we all know, John Dewey highly influenced education. And it means that the teacher must undergo questioning approach, considering why things are as they are and how they might be. While Sean presents a slightly different view, he regards reflection as having two aspects: the reflection in action and reflection on action, which we are going to discuss later. In addition, Finlay defined reflective practice as learning through and from experience towards gaining new insights of self and practice. So the process of reflection is a continuous cycle which needs to be repeated. The first is that you need to teach for you to be able to reflect into something. Next is you have to self-assess the effect of your teaching and how it has impacted on your students or your learners' learning. And of course, the next cycle is to consider ways or new ways of teaching which you can improve the quality of learning after analyzing the weaknesses or the hard time that your students are into. And after that, you have to try those ideas in practice. Of course, being a teacher, you never stop learning. So you have to consult some research or theories to be able to have your model or your path in solving the issues within the class and the learning abilities and capabilities of your students. And after trying ideas or theories into practice, you are undergoing into another experience. So you have to repeat the process because you indulge yourself or your teaching approach into a new setting. So considering reflective or reflection or reflective process as a systematic reviewing process, it links from one experience to the next, making sure that your student make maximum progress or making sure that the students progress or achieve your learning objectives or the learning objective stated in the curriculum or in your lesson. And it aims to make the teacher more aware of their own professional knowledge and action by challenging their own assumption in everyday or day-to-day practice and critically evaluating practitioners' own responses to practice situations. The reflective process, it encourages teachers to work with one another and to share best practice and draw others for support. It ultimately makes sure that all students learn more effectively as learning can be tailored to them. So the approach of reflective practice is more focused on the professional development of the teacher, and it encourages collaboration within those teachers that specifically specialized within a certain subject or subject content. And I have read that some schools have PLC or professional learning community where a group of teachers with the same subject being handled are collaborating with each other to identify the problems their students are facing and what is the best way for them to encourage student to actively involve within the class discussion or the learning process. There are a lot of models of reflective practice, but there are three specific or most used models when it comes to reflective cycle. First is that the Kolb's learning cycle. The Kolb's learning cycle or the experiential learning cycle, it is a continuous process of effective learning through experience, and it was proposed by David Kolb, who is an educational researcher that developed four stages of reflective model. And according to him, or in this model, it highlights reflective practice as a tool to gain conclusions and ideas from an experience. And the aim is to take the learning into new experiences to complete the cycle. And the first stage is the active experimentation. From its word, you have to experiment. You have to deal with experimentation. And it is a planning or you're trying out what you have learned. So of course, the practitioner must expose into a concrete experience, and this means that experiencing something new for the first time in the classroom. The experiences should be an active one, and it is used to test out new ideas and teaching methods, and this followed by observation of the concrete experience, then reflecting into experience. Here, practitioners should consider the strengths of the experience and areas of development. Practitioners need to form an understanding of what helps students learn and what hindered it, and then this lead to the formation of abstract or concepts. So, as a practitioner, they need to make sense of what was happened, and they do this through making links between what they have done, what they already know, and what they need to learn. So, they draw ideas from research. You have to read a lot of research and a lot of theories, but not all theories are good in practice, because theories, when applied into practice, sometimes fail because we have a different context or different concept of classroom or students, and that's why you have to read, or the teacher must read much more research, and it helped to support development and understanding, and draw practitioners to modify their ideas or devise new approaches based on what they have learned from their observations and wide research. And the final stage is when the practitioner consider how they are going to put what they have learned into practice. The practitioner's abstract concepts are made concrete as they use these ideas in future situations, resulting into new experiences. And the ideas from the observations and conceptualizations are made into active experimentation as they are implemented into future learning. And so, the cycle starts over and over again, and in a new method. So, the Kolb's model aims to draw the importance of using both our own everyday experiences and educational research. And that will help to improve the learning and teaching process. And reflection is not simply enough, and this reflection must drive a change which is rooted into an educational research. Educational researchers have long promoted the importance of reflecting on practice, and it supports student learning and staff development. There are many different models of reflective practice. However, they are all share the same the same basic aim, and that is to get the best result from learning for both the teacher and the students. Each model of reflection aims to unpick learning to make links between doing and thinking. One of it is the David Kolb experiential learning cycle, or the Kolb's learning cycle. So the theoretical approach of reflection is further developed by Gibbs, and his model is based on a six-stage approach, leading from a description of the experience through conclusions and considerations for future events. While most of the core principles are similar to Kolb's, Gibbs' model is broken down further to encourage the teacher to reflect on their own thoughts and feelings. So Gibbs' model is an effective tool to help a teacher or a practitioner of reflective approach to reflect after the experience. The first stage is description. From the word description, you are just describing what is the experience all about. So this is the factual account or the scenario that happened in your classroom, and it should be an analytical stage. You are going to analyze. Next is the feelings. What did you feel with that experience? Does it feel good? Does it feel bad? And those include in that experience. You have to consider what they feel about your teaching approach or about the learning process. And next is that you have to evaluate, or the evaluation stage. You have to discuss what went well and analyze your practice or analyze your teaching approach. And it is also important to consider areas that needed improvement and the things that did not work as initially planned. And you have to consider the teacher are considering the learning of himself or herself and the student's learning. Next is analyzing or analysis, in which you or the teacher is trying to make sense on the experience or what he had experienced. They consider what might help and what are hindering the learning process. In this stage, the teacher refers to any relevant literature or research to help him cope up with the problem setting or the problem present in the classroom environment. And let's say, for example, that the problem is that the teacher instruction was not clear. So you have to consult the related literature that is present or the educational research on how to communicate effectively. And after that is the stage in which the conclusion occurs, or the formulation of conclusion. It is where the teacher draws ideas together and they understand what they need to improve and how to do this based on their research. And lastly is the action plan. It is where the teacher implement the all of the elements of the cycle, and they create step by step plan for the new learning experience, and they identify what will be kept and what will be developed and what will be do differently for the learning process to be productive and active. So in Gibbs model, the first three sections are concerned with what happened, and the final three sections relate to making sense of the experience and how will the teacher can improve the situation. The last model is this the reflection in action and reflection on action. So it is another approach to reflection that is the work of Sean, and it distinguishes between the reflection in action, which refers to the during the doing stage. That is where the teacher is reflecting on the incident while it can still benefit the learning. So it is carried during the lesson rather than reflecting on how to do the things differently in the future. And it is an effective method of reflection as it allows to react and change an event at the time it happens. So let's say, for example, in the classroom, you may be teaching a topic, or a teacher is teaching a topic which the student are not understanding. So the reflection in action allows the teacher to understand why this happened and how to respond or overcome the situation. Next is the reflection on action. So the reflection on action, on the other hand, involves reflecting on how practice can be developed after the lesson has been taught. And Sean recognizes the importance of reflecting back in order to discover how our knowing and action may have contributed to an expected outcome. And this means you are reflecting after the event and how your knowledge, or how the teacher knowledge or the previous teaching may have directed to that experience. And it encourages ideas on what you need to change for the future. And you carry out reflection and action outside the classroom. And it is where you consider the situation again. So this requires deeper thought, and it encourages to consider causes and options, which should be informed by a wider network of understanding from research. And following any of the above models of reflection, you will have a questioning approach to teaching, as what I am saying, and you will consider why things are as they are and how they could be. You will consider the strengths and areas of development in your own practice, questioning why learning experiences might be this way and considering how to develop them. Above all, the aforementioned models the main aim is to reflect on the experiences. What is the problem? How the learning process occur? How the teaching process occur? What hinders the learning process? What are encourage or encourage the teaching process or the learning process. And after considering the problems or analyzing, determining the problems, your main goal is to find a solution. So how are you going to find a solution with that problem? Of course, you have to deal with researches. You have to read and read and read for you to find something that is aligned with the problems you are facing. And you have to experiment. You have to apply something new, something different to for the learning and teaching process to be enjoyable and yes, productive, active. And in the reflective approach kasi, it focus more on critical questioning or questioning approach of the teacher, and it is where collaboration exists or highlighted. The collaboration between your students, they are the one giving you the feedback. You can involve them in giving feedback about their learning process, and of course also in your teaching approach. Your colleagues can also be part of that evaluation, and you can also instill strategies that they use effectively for you to apply it in your classroom or in your teaching process. And of course, researches and theories, concepts, and models.
Here are the 5 main principles of reflection. First is reacting. In reacting, this will give you an question like, how will I decide what area of my practice I need to focus on? With this, it will be decided by looking at data. Each learner's performances are an aspect of the curriculum. Next is recording or logging your reflection. This will give you a question on how I will assess my performance. With this, it will take the form of an observation, discussion, or shared planning. This will be recorded by yourself, a peer, or a student. Also, it is a document that will use to record your reflection. Here are some examples is the journal, notebook, or form provided by your school or institution. And this will give you the question of when will I log this. With this, it will be logged straight after the lesson, during or before the lesson. And on how often will you record this reflection. Next is reviewing or understanding your current teaching methods. This will ask a question like, what worked well and how do I know this? It will consider what the students really understand and enjoyed about the lesson and why. How do you think that the students have improved? Or it consider what the student did not get involved with or find challenging. It could some practical ideas include introducing a different task, clearing instructions, time-based activities which appeal to different learning styles. Next is revising or adapting your teaching to trying new strategies. With this, it could be a whole task or something specific about a task. Some practical ideas to include changing the task from independent work to paired work, adding a scaffold to a challenging task, providing instructions step by step, and making activities time-based. Next is reworking. With this, it consider the what will you need to do before and during. What you will do before the lesson and during the lesson. That to make sure your changes happen. This will be the students, or what will the students be doing differently to make sure that they can have the progress. Or also, what things will you need to put your revised ideas into practice. Some practical examples include color pens, larger paper, handouts, cut-up activities, or specialized equipment. Here are some examples of reflective activities that show reflective practice. Reflective practitioner will continuously review the learning process to make sure that all the students make maximum progress. While making through this document, you may have identified a model which appeals you, or as well as using a model of reflection, you can carry out other reflective activities to develop your practice. This can include the following. First is the self-questioning. In self-questioning, you are asking yourself, what are the things that can help you to understand the effect and efficiency of your teaching? Second is experimenting with new ideas. Trying out with new methods or approaches in the discussion can help you to teach in the classroom, it can create a new learning of opportunities. These changes can be as simple as varying a small activity or as adventurous as changing your whole approach or plan. The third is discussing with other colleagues. Drawing on support from colleagues will allow you to cement understanding and get involved with others' ideas and best practice. Next is discussing with students. Discussing with students can draw a feedback that will make sure your reflections are focused on your students. By reflecting with students, you allow them to play on an active part in the learning and gain insight into what needs to improve or to support the students' development. And lastly is the observation and the feedbacks. With this, observing by colleague will allow you to gain others' perspective and giving you new ideas into your practice and provide feedback and on how to improve. Observing your colleague can also provide new ideas and approaches which you can try in your own practice. All these approaches are explained in the next step section, and here are some guide on how to carry out reflective practice. First is the learning journal. In learning journal is a collection of notes, observation, thoughts, and other relevant materials built up over a period of time and recorded together. After each lesson, you record your thoughts and feelings regarding the lesson. Next is lesson evaluations. In lesson evaluations, you are required to think back to the lesson, assessing its strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities for development. In order to help you to focus In your evaluation, it will consider the following questions. First is, what went well in this lesson? Why? What problems did I experience? Why? How I engaged and active were the students? How much learning took place? Or how do I know? Once you have taught your lesson, record your reflections on the lessons as soon as possible. This will help you track of your progress as developing reflective practitioner and also help you track your students' progress. Next is observations. In observation, there are questions of what are they and what happens. Observation are when someone assesses you practiced through watching it in action. This observation should have a very specific focus. For example, the quality of questioning or the quality of student-led activities. This focus on the specific measured, reflected upon and revised to make sure your students make progress. Once you have set the specific focus or target area, a colleague will watch you deliver the lesson and give feedback on the strength of your practice or some possible ideas for development. These observations, also called be carried out over a block list of lessons to show progression. The next is the student dialogue. With this is where you make sure students play an active part in their learning. You will ask them to carry out a short reflection on how they felt about the lesson and to assess the lesson's strength and possible ideas for development. As a student, to keep a learning journal of their lesson, this journal could include what they enjoyed, how they felt in the lesson, what they understand and engage with. They still need more help with what they like about the lesson and things thought could have been better. The last is the shared planning. In shared planning is where you draw a support from colleagues to plan lessons together. You draw on each other best practice to help to create an innovative and improved lessons. In shared planning can take many forms. The planning a lesson with another colleague together from start to finish, using a lesson a colleague has produced and adapting it to suit your style and class. What are the benefits of reflective practice? Reflective practice helps create confidence to the teachers. Reflective practice develops your ability to understand how students learn and the best way to teach them. By reflecting on your teaching, you identify any barriers to learning that your students have. You then create lessons which reteach any content which your students have not been able to access to allow them to overcome any obstacles and develop. Being reflective will also make sure you have a wider range of skills as you find new way to teach. This will develop your confidence in the classroom as you find the new best ways to develop your knowledge of a subject. By reflecting, you will develop abilities to solve problems through questioning and changing the way you deliver your lessons. You will find new solutions and become more flexible with your teaching. It allows you to take some time to assess and appreciate your own teaching. Also helps create confident students. As a result of reflecting, students are challenged as you see new methods in the classroom. From reflection, you should encourage your student to take new challenges in learning, developing a secure and confident knowledge base. Reflective practice makes sure you are responsible for yourself and your students. It is reflecting on your teaching will help you to understand how your students best learn, and it will allow you to be accountable for their progress. By assessing the strengths and weaknesses in your own teaching, you will develop an awareness of the factors that control and prevent learning. This reflection process will also help you to understand yourself and the way you teach. By asking yourself questions and self-assessing, you will understand what your strengths are and any areas where development might be needed. Reflecting allows you to understand how you have helped others to achieve and what this looks like in a practical learning environment. By asking your students for their thoughts and feelings on the learning, they play an active part in the learning cycle. This allows them to take ownerships of their learning and also work you give and also work with you and give feedback, which creates self-aware and responsible students. Once a student starts to play an active part in the learning cycle, they will become more aware of different learning styles and tasks. They become more aware of how they learn and on how they develop the skills and strategies to become lifelong learners. Reflective practice encourages innovation. Also, reflective practice allows you to adapt lesson to suit your classes. You can create and experiment with new ideas and approaches of your teaching to gain maximum success. By varying learning, experimenting with new approaches, students have richer learning experience that they will think more creatively, imaginatively, and resourcefully, and be ready to adapt to new ways of methods of teaching. Reflective practice encourage engagement that helps you and any challenge with your own practice, as you will justify decisions and rationales choices you have made. It encourages you to develop an understanding of different perspectives and viewpoints. These viewpoints might be those of students focusing on their strengths, preferences, and developments, or those of other colleagues sharing best practice and different strategies. When you become more aware of your students' preferences and strengths, learning becomes more tailored to their needs, and so they are more curious and are equipped to develop more deeply. Reflective practice benefits all. You create an environment which centers on the learner. This environment will support students and teachers all around you to become innovative, confident, engaged, and responsible. Once you start the reflective process, your quality of teaching and learning will improve. You will take account of students' various learning styles and individual needs, and plan new lessons based on this. Reflection helps focus on the learning process, so learning outcomes and results will improve as you reflect on how your learners are learning.